Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My Compass is what I call my channel. It is Monday, January 13th. And I was out walking today, like I am most days when I can. Had a really nice walk this morning, did the big Lucy Loop. So it's about an hour, and Lucy and I really enjoyed watching the deer in the distance that were feeding in the field. Took a little video and I posted it, I think just on my Facebook page. That was a highlight of the walk this morning. And I know in the past, a number of times when I've done my reflections on life videos, I'm often walking in my Lucy Loop or in the woods up back. And had one of those moments this morning too. I was thinking about a couple of different things, but I didn't record anything. But it was another one of those walks where I just found myself talking to myself a lot, and kind of going through some things in my mind, some things that have happened in the past, and a lot that I've referred to in previous reflections videos. But it's funny how, and I don't know why, but it hits you sometimes, or some things in life and changes in life, and how it affects you or how it might be affecting other people. So I just had a good long conversation with myself, and it really gives me mental clarity. And my walks are always, I find, more about the mental exercise than the physical exercise. And when I do reflections on life video, I'm glad some people seem to get something out of it. And that's, to me, I guess, is a nice bonus. But really it's about me and mental clarity for myself. It does actually help me, is what I find. So I'm glad that helps some of you too. This is a little bit different video, I guess. 2 or 3 episodes back, I gave you kind of a little bookshelf tour. And it's January now, of course, almost the middle of the month. And if you're on YouTube at all, if you follow any book channels, BookTube, you know that a lot of people do their top reads of the previous year, what they're reading this year, and so on. So I thought, well, for fun, maybe I'll just go through the books that I read this year being the past year, 2024, and in no particular order, and not giving a lot of detail maybe on any of them specifically. Just kind of grab them. I've got some stacked here, some stacked kind of just down here on the floor, and some next to me, as well as some want to reads this year, and even a few DNFs, because I'm okay with DNF in a book if I'm not feeling it at the time. And sometimes I'm just not feeling it at that time, and I'll come back to it a couple months later, and I'm right into it. Other times the book just isn't doing it for me at all. So, maybe you'll have some fun with it. I'm going to have some fun with it. Maybe you'll get some inspiration yourself. I enjoy watching some booktubers and get some ideas from them on what I might enjoy too. So as I said, this is in no particular order. So it's not from January 2024 up to December 2024, which is whatever's kind of stacked around me. I'm a slow reader too. I will say I'm a word for word reader, and I'm all right with that. And I'm not into numbers and how many books have you read. And I know people have those goals, like, well, to me, same as when I'm out walking, right? People ask, well, how far do you go? I don't know. I don't do it for mileage or for the steps. Everyone seems to be wanting to know how many steps they take. So I just walk. I could kind of tell you how long I went, but and I get an estimate or an idea of how far some of the walks are. But other times it's like, no, I don't know. I'm just walking. And that's kind of how I do my books too. But I did keep track of what I read, just put it in here in a little journal. I used to do it online in Goodreads, but I haven't used Goodreads in ages. I'm trying to get back to more of an analog life, which is kind of ironic because I sit here making a YouTube video. Journaling, writing down my grocery lists on paper in a small notebook and so on. So I just keep track of what I read, because sometimes I even forget what it said. Did I read that or not? And I go back, so yeah, I guess I did read that. Anyway, without further ado, here we go. This is a trilogy, Brandon Sanderson, and it's the Mistborn trilogy. It's usually how it's referred to as. It says right there in the spine. And I read all 3 of them. I've read some fantasy in the past, for sure. Some I've tried out like years ago and more recently. And sometimes I like fantasy, sometimes I don't. It kind of depends on what it is for me. Suzanne is a big fantasy fan, and she's read all the Wheel of Time, which is a massive series. Not sure if that would be my thing or not, but sometimes some fantasy does really interest me. Like Game of Thrones, for instance, I had read the first, I think, the 4 books of Game of Thrones before it was kind of a thing. It became a huge thing in the TV series and so on. I like Game of Thrones because it was pretty much like medieval England in lots of ways. And that's what a lot of fantasy is, kind of set in those medieval times, even though it is fantasy. Mistborn's a little bit different. Brandon Sanderson is a massively popular writer in the fantasy genre. He actually finished the Wheel of Time series because Robert Jordan, the author, had passed away. And then he's written a number of bestsellers himself. So I read the Mistborn series. Some of it's good, some of it not so much. Some of it dragged on for me. The magic system is actually kind of cool that is in it. I did like that. Just trying to make some room here, sorry. Ken Follett. Let's grab this big chunker right here. I read this one back in March. I love Ken Follett. Read a lot of Ken Follett. This is a continuation of his whole series, The Pillars of the Earth. Pillars of the Earth right up here. This is the most recent one. And I really like his writing. I find it really grips me. The stories are ones that make a lot of sense to me because they seem to be about real people. I know Suzanne's not a fan of Pillars of the Earth. She's like, oh, they're just talking about building a friggin' church forever. There's more, to me, there's a lot more to it than that. And I'd like to go back actually and just read the whole series again at some point. And I'm sure I'd get much more out of it. I'm not a person who goes back and reads books again, but I think there's some that I would like to do that too. Game of Thrones would be another one. So I lost interest in Game of Thrones after a while. Excuse me for a moment. Keelan Patrick Burke, Master of the Moors. I didn't read this one, but it was to remind me because I couldn't find Sour Candy. Maybe Claire still has. I know Claire had borrowed it. Just thin little book. He's an Irish writer. So Sour Candy was a quick read as well. And I read it around Halloween time because he's a horror writer. I don't tend to read horror much at all. Doesn't tend to be my thing. Sour Candy was actually kind of, it's a fun read. Excuse me. And it was a quick read too. So it might be worth checking out. Read a Tom Clancy, read Patriot Games, read Hunt for Red October years ago, and Patriot Games is okay. There's a lot of detail in his writing. Of course, there's lots of others. I'm not sure there's lots of others. A couple others that write for Tom now, because he is gone as well. It was all right, but it does drag on for me. Steve Barry, The Last Kingdom. A number of years ago, I read probably 6 or 8 of his books, Steve Barry's, and I really quite enjoyed them. I remember the Romanov Prophecy, especially enjoying that one, and the Amber Room, and a few of the others. So yeah, I want to get back into Steve Barry, and they're just light reads. Right? It's just a kind of paperback novel. It's very quick to read through. It's just okay. I realize I've kind of moved on a little bit from Steve Barry. I might try a couple of the others again, or some I haven't read of his before. They get a little silly in their dialogue, and it's like, oh, come on, that couldn't happen, that type of thing, which really does tend to turn me off somewhat, whether it's a television show or a movie or a book. Local author Soren Bundrup Nielsen. I'm on the Blommen Natural Society Board of Directors of Soren. He's the past president, and he just lives a few minutes from here. Voles Not Moles and Merging. Voles Not Moles, he studied voles, not moles, when he's working on his PhD thesis. So this is some of his stories around that. So it's nature writing, essentially. Emerging was a little more enjoyable to me. It's got the horse there, and it's him on his horse, and it is fictional but not fictional. It's leaving from his home and going out on a ride within a day of where he lives. So they're all areas, even though he might not say the area specifically or the person specifically. I knew where he was most of the time because I've grown up here and lived here all my life, and I've walked the land as well. So it was neat that I could really connect with a lot of that. And Suzanne and I went to the Bruce Cockburn concert at the Rebecca Cohn last year, Is that in March? I think it might have been in March. Maybe it was William Prince in March and Bruce was earlier. Anyway, we saw Bruce Cockburn. The man's looking old. He uses two canes on the to get across the stage. He's quite hunched over, but he can sure still play. And his music was beautiful. I've always been a big Bruce Cockburn fan and what he has to say with his music. And he had his books there for sale, so I bought his memoir, Rumors of Glory. It was just all right, to be honest. Yeah, he deals a lot in here about his spirituality and Christianity and his connections to that, which to me got a little, and that's just me speaking personally, I got a little tired of that after a while. I wanted to hear more about, him as a songwriter and him as a musician and him on the road and what is his story, although his story is in here, but I was looking for more, I guess, around his music. A lot of it's there, but I wanted more. And then I also read My Effin' Life, Geddy Lee, lead singer of Rush, of course, greatest rock and roll band of all time. Excellent, really, really enjoyed this. Kind of an odd title, but I thought Geddy did a great job on it. I got a good sense of who he was, how he grew up, stories about his parents. He has a Jewish background, and how he came up with the name Geddy Lee, because that's not his, of course, real name. That's more of a stage name. Let's see, another Ken Follett. This one was excellent. Came out a handful of years ago. This is paperback, clearly. And I waited on this one because I didn't know if it was one that I would actually enjoy. It's like, I don't know. It's not quite the same as his other historical fiction. I really like historical fiction, so it's probably my favorite genre. But I did. I did like it. And yeah, it is fiction. But it's more recent, and it takes place, a lot of it takes place in Africa, North Africa, and in the US a bit too. I would recommend Never. Another historical fiction I read, I've got a number of Len Dayton. I picked them up at a used bookstore, Endless Shores in Bridgetown. Fantastic used bookstore. Huge selection. Prices are very, very reasonable. Len Dayton had been around for a long time. Tragic story of a Berlin family, 1899 to 1945. And it follows two brothers, right from childhood right up to their times, and they're two different paths, if you will, through World War One and in between the interwar years, and then through to World War II as well. So it was a long read. Some of it got a little draggy in parts, but I did really enjoy Winter, and I would certainly read some more of Len Dayton. The Last Island, I got this actually through another booktuber that I follow who reads almost exclusively historical nonfiction, and this is a recommendation. She hadn't read it yet, but she had gotten it as an advanced copy, so I ordered it. It's excellent read. The Last Island, Discovery, Defiance, and the most elusive tribe on Earth in the Indian Ocean, the Andaman Islands. And so that's kind of, I guess you'd call it southeast of India, off of India, so just west of Indonesia, and not a long read. And I'd probably give that 4 stars out of 5. The only thing with this is I was expecting the author to actually spend some time, as you get near the book, on the specific island with that tribe, but I understand why that did not happen as well. But it's really cool. I also like to read mysteries. Since historical fiction is probably my favorite, and I'll read some fantasy, and I'll read nonfiction as well. Nonfiction tends to be history, might be politics a little bit, if you want to call it that too. But I do like a good mystery, and one of my favorite mystery authors is Louise Penny. I read 4 of hers in 2024, so I think I'm up to about 13 or 14. It's a whole series. So there's about, I know she's got a hardcover out now, so I think I've got about another 4 or so to go before I would get caught up to her current writing with the story. But most of her stories, well, they're all the same characters, and it's the same inspector, and most of her stories take place in a fictional small village, small town or village in southern Quebec, in the townships that doesn't actually exist. But you really get to know the characters really well, and some of them are quite comical. And you get to know, of course, the inspectors really well. And The whodunits, I'm not very good at figuring them out, I must say. But there seems to be a lot of things that are happening in this small village. And sometimes they take place in another place. So it might be Montreal, or one of these is also in Gaspé. I think is one of those from last year. Some of them, like I guess any series, you'd probably like more than others, but I enjoy them all. So I will continue with Louise Penny. Highly recommend Louise Penny. Same with Anne Cleeves. You watch Shetland or Vera on BritBox. If you don't, you really should. They are awesome shows. They are based on Anne Cleeves' books, and these are two of them here. This is one from the Vera series called Telling Tales. So she's a British author, and this is from a different series, since it's down here, the writer Shetland and Vera, called The Long Call. So this is a different series again. But any of the Shetland or Vera or anything by Anne Cleeves, kind of like Louise Penny, very good. I really enjoy her writing style, and I guess that's my geographic background. I'm a person who really likes to get a sense of place, and she's very, very good at giving a sense of place. You can hear the seagulls, you can feel the wind, you can get smells coming. It's just, yeah, I get a strong sense of that. Another one that does that really well, and I haven't read any of his books this year, is Peter May. I'd highly recommend Black House to start there with Peter May. Time's getting a little long here, so I'm trying to go quick. I read Dune. We saw the movie, loved it, and I'd never read Dune before. It's quite a chunk of a book. Book was good. Probably enjoyed the movie more. Some people might cringe at that, but I did enjoy the book too. Dune was worth reading. Don't know if we'll read any of the follow-ups that are with it. Going to hang on to this one on my lap for a second. Story of Russia, Orlando Figes, nonfiction. Really, really good. Orlando Figes has a number of books about Russia, about Soviet Union, that region of the world, and not a terribly long book. It gives a really good overview of Russia right up to present day. Would really recommend that one. Bestseller, which was excellent, nonfiction, The Wager, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder that took place in southern South America, right around the tip and up on the Pacific side. It reads like reads almost like a movie or something that's fictionalized, but it's all very, very true. Really good read. And The Return of Great Powers, Russia, China, and the Next World War. Picked that up at Marigold Bookstore in Annapolis Royal. Really, really good bookstore too. Has just a lot of unique titles, ones that you won't find in other places. And I've got this and another one that I actually DNF'd on from there. And it's current politics. We know what's happened with Russia and Ukraine, and China and Thailand are popping up in the news on occasion. There are reasons for that, and so it goes into that a little bit if you want to get caught up in your current politics. And I saved this one. This is one of the ones I picked up in Romania, one of two. Love this book. Suzanne's reading it now, called Children of the Night by Paul Kenyon. The strange and epic story of modern Romania. I'm not a quick reader. As I said, I'm a word for word reader. I'm a slow reader, and I really enjoy taking this in. It's one of those ones I would wish to read again because there's so much in here. And it starts off back with Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, Dracula as you might know him, but it's predominantly about 19th and 20th century and even right up into early 21st century Romania. It gives you a really strong sense of what that country's gone through, and they have gone through a lot. I am currently reading, as Claire would say, a dad book, The Russo-Ukrainian War by Sari Ploki, The Return of History. I've had this for a little while, so it's about the current war, but let me see, I've got about 100 pages left on it. It goes up to, I'd have to look, sometime in 2023, so it's 2025 now. So I thought, gosh, I should read that before it becomes a little bit dated. Really good too. It gives a lot of strong, easy to follow background on Russia, on Ukraine, why Putin is so determined to take over Ukraine, and why he's so determined to recreate a Russian empire, if you will. And I've got a few DNFs. Gosh, I'm up to 20 minutes already. Dracula, Bram Stoker. I wanted to read that before he went to Romania. I got maybe a third of the way through. It was written in the late 1800s. Yeah, and it reads like it was written in the late 1800s, but it did give me a sense of what the story of Dracula by Bram Stoker is. So Bram Stoker is Irish, as you may know, and he never actually went to Romania, but he did a lot of reading, a lot of research around Romanian history, around Vlad Tepes, Dracula, and the mythology around that, and the things that we know about Dracula as far as, the stake in the heart and the garlic and coming out at night, sleeping during the day. There's actually historical pieces and reasonings for those, as we learned when we were in Romania, but they don't have to deal with the fictionalized version of it. It was kind of neat to learn some of that behind it. Snowblind, and I DNF'd on this. You can see I still got the bookmark there. I just couldn't get into it for whatever reason. It takes place in northern Iceland. As you may know, we were in Iceland, which was incredible, in May and June last year. So I thought I might enjoy that one, but it was slow for me. And another dad book, I wanted to read The Balkans before we went to Southeast Europe. I didn't get, I got maybe a quarter of the way through that. Yeah, and it reads a lot like a textbook, a lot of detail, but I kept the bookmark there because I would like to go back and pick away some of it again. And a lot of it had to do with parts that we weren't going to and didn't go to. Deals a lot with the Ottoman Empire and more to the south where we ended up being in the Danube. Oh, and I used this when we were in Iceland too. Lonely Planet is really good. So picked away at this. Of course, it's not one that you sit down and read necessarily, but it was really helpful when we were in Iceland. So that was some DNFs, excuse me again. And just a few quick ones that I'd like to read this year. We'll see. And so again, I don't count, but there'll be more. The current one I'm reading, I've read a couple of Stephen King's years ago and said I'm not really into horror. And I can't get into Stephen King, but everyone seems to love Stephen King. I might try Misery, because I remember seeing the movie years ago, really enjoyed the movie. Might be a story that I'd like. Urban or modern urban fantasy, Jim Butcher, Stormfront. Lots of strong recommendations on that. I've had a couple of his sitting there for a while. And A Furious Devotion, The Life of Shane MacGowan. I bought this in Iceland, haven't read it. Suzanne read it. Love the Pogues, Shane MacGowan, his writing, and even his voice, even though his voice is really, really rough, and what he has to say. And he lived a pretty rough life, and that comes out here in the book, is my understanding too. I've also got Boudica here, and I know Suzanne tried that and DNF'd on it, but it gets really good reviews, historical fiction as well, in England. And I think there's 3 in the series now, so I may give Boudica a try. Those are just a few that I'd like to get to at some point this year. Probably a couple more Louise Pennies. But we'll see how it goes. In future episodes, I don't know where they're going to go. I never really know what I'm doing with this channel. I just do it for fun. But I might go through a few of the books that are on my must-reads, or ones that I've really, really enjoyed over the years. I would say some of my favorite books that I've read. Maybe I'll do a little episode on that at some point, and give you a reading update or book update sometime too. Hopefully you're reading. I think it's important to read something all the time on the go, even if it's a magazine, so I do like my magazines as well. But that's it for me. Maybe you get some ideas there and give you some hints or even a bit of inspiration, and enjoy your reading if that is what you're doing on a daily basis. And have a great day, and we'll chat soon.